and you're the second half of that. He's the third half.
Yeah, well, we can move this over here, and you can talk,
That works.
which is fine. You good? All
When I
right,
need to say something, I'll just holler.
all right. Let's see.
And you need to,
What do I need to do tonight?
you can leave that there, just clip that right here,
Click what?
the microphone.
No, you don't need to use, you need to use that?
No,
Is that for recording or not?
that's for the online.
Questions, core questions.
That's for the online.
Oh, okay.
Oh, for the home.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me? Yes?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Our speakers tonight are our very own Kim and Michael Lungociu. So I'm not even going to read what's on the paper. You know them, and if you don't, read what's on the paper. We welcome them, and we thank them for being willing to share their experiences on their recent trip. Well, I'll tell you. They'll tell you. All right, here we go.
So, you may wonder why Michael and I spent October of 2024 in Brașov, Romania. Early in Russia's invasion of Ukraine, Brașov served as a center for processing the thousands of refugees coming from its neighbor, Ukraine. You go to the next slide. I found Projects Abroad, an organization that finds homestays in conjunction with volunteer projects. I was a bit late, however, with my goal of helping refugees, since most had been placed by that time. So I decided to teach English to Romanian kids, which is also a priority for Projects Abroad.
So we're going to try to describe an adventure, a cross-cultural experience through the teaching, reconnecting with family, and a meeting of new friends. We paint a picture of the country still recovering from control of the Ceausescu regime. And we explore a process of healing and importance of freedom for the people who live there. Go ahead.
This is not our first visit to Romania. As a child, Michael visits his relatives when he's 9 and again when he's 13, 1967 and 1970. These are the years of Ceausescu's brutal reign. You'll hear more about this later. On another recent trip, we bring our kids to Romania in 2016 when they are in their late 20s. And of course, we have to show you a shot of how gorgeous they are. Not necessarily still that beautiful, but beautiful. And that's, yeah. But in October of 2024, we spend the first 2 nights in the capital city of Bucharest. Okay, it is beautiful, and we enjoy bopping around the old town, sipping drinks at cafes. It's a festive place to celebrate Michael's birthday. Here is Michael enjoying the famous national dish, sarmale with mamaliga, which is stuffed cabbage. Mamaliga is like polenta. But so you'll be hearing sarmale quite a bit.
Now, we visited many churches in Bucharest, and it's not difficult to find an Orthodox church in Bucharest with 14,500 churches in the country. There are, here you're taking a look at the church of Radu Voda. It's a monastery built in 1568 in downtown Bucharest. And here's another church. Kim, pronounce it, please.
Stavropoleos.
Thank you. Monastery dedicated in 1724 to Archangel Michael and Gabriel. It's adorned with icons all along the perimeter of the outside. It's an absolutely gorgeous church. And while we were there, we lit candles for Tom Sipu's mom. Inside the monastery, you can see the iconostas, and churches in Romania were just a thing that you had to visit. There's so many old, beautiful churches within the city, and because we were just there literally one full day. We hit a couple of them that we just loved. Right.
On October 3, day after his birthday, we take the train to Brasov through the Carpathian Mountains and the Pahova Valley. The scenery is striking. So we've
Here
got,
you can see our trip through the mountain pass
yeah, here is
of the
Bucharest,
Prahova Valley.
Brasov, and you can see the Carpathians, right in the middle of the Carpathians.
And this is one of the mountains that we pass. It's just beautiful. This one's special because right there where my pointer is, probably can't see it, but there's a cross up there. And it lights up during at night. It's just a beautiful area. And it's also near where the king had his residence back last century in Pelish. Okay?
Mhm.
And here we see our two hosts, Ali and Daniela. This Ali and this is Daniela.
Yes, there's Ollie, the sponsors, Ollie, the programs, Ollie and Daniela.
Yeah, Ali took care of like a lot of the day-to-day activities, where we're going and our housing. And Daniela, she loved to take us out, go hiking with us. Although we did most of the hiking alone, she was one who showed us a lot. Then we just repeated it. Well, this is looking down Republica. This is from the square looking down one of the pedestrian streets. And here you see the next center slide is the
Shows you
wall
the wall, the medieval wall.
with the Draper's Bastion. Every guild built a tower, and this was the Draper's Tower. And then on the right, you see St. Nicholas Church, built in 1495, and the oldest school next to it as well.
And St. Nicholas is an Orthodox church,
Mhm.
which is not located inside the walls, but it's just outside.
Yeah, the Orthodox churches were always outside of the walled city. Strange.
So Ollie, my project sponsor, meets us at the train station. We chat for a while, but gradually we learn that both my teaching assignment and our living arrangement have fallen through. We've been promised a place inside the medieval walled town, but instead we are placed in an unattractive neighborhood outside the town. Taking matters into our own hands, we find an Airbnb overlooking a piazza. Sounds great, right? We haul our stuff up 4 flights of stairs to find a cramped attic space with no windows. Hence no view of the piazza. Yeah. So we cancel the reservation.
We got out of there.
Ollie finds us a new place, one owned by her friend, right in the middle of town. Though it's quite cramped too.
And here you see, basically it's location. You got a two-room apartment on the first floor. Nice, but there's
Yeah,
two rooms, and there's just no place to put clothes in the bedroom.
So you
So you live out of your suitcase for a month.
you look at that and you think, what a beautiful place to stay, right? It's gorgeous. It's a beautiful street. Okay. By now we are weary of moving in and out of apartments and worried about overstressing our sponsor, who's been in tears watching us try to find a place, which basically amounts to doing her job for her. But seeing her so stressed, complaining about our new lodging becomes, in our minds, taboo. We'll have to suck it up and stay. After all, it's only 1 month. The apartment is in a 19th century building. Slowly, the problems begin to reveal themselves. First, the lighting consists of a blindingly bright bulb, no shade, hanging from a wire on the ceiling. One of these hovers over the kitchen table, making you feel interrogated at 6 a.m. as you sip your coffee. On your very first morning, you wake bleary-eyed and head to the kitchen to make coffee, only to have the faucet screech at you like a banshee. Kind of like oh, that's screech at you. But so the theme is, in order to grow, you need to get out of your comfort zone, right? This is a running sort of theme. It's a refrain kind of. It's a refrain. The fountain is where they used to. See, here's a piazza. You keep hearing me say piazza. This is the big piazza. And if you walk this way and then down, that's our street. So our street ends up at the top of the hill on the piazza. This and there's a medieval fountain there. But go ahead.
There's a medieval woman. Kim.
No. What was? I don't think that was in the slide.
No, that's you.
Oh, you showed a picture of a medieval woman.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay.
You did. Okay. All right. When we describe the fountain is where they used to burn witches. When we describe the apartment to Michael's cousin, he says a communist block apartment is better. One night, returning late from school, we noticed that we have no water. No worries, it'll be back in the morning. The following morning, I wake up first and discover there's still no water. When Michael wakes up, he calls out to the kitchen, "Is there water?" I reply, "No." Then I hear a long, drawn-out expletive, not loud enough to be meant for me to hear, but clearly too loud for me to miss. Well, I've heard it, and it's delivered with such visceral tone of anguish that it becomes our theme for the day. Old Town Brașov is a well-preserved medieval walled city, but you get what you ask for. With charming medieval streets, you also have medieval plumbing. The theme of living medieval begins to emerge with living communist, meaning living hard. Still without water, Michael sets out on a project I don't understand at first. He finds a bucket and takes off saying, "I'm going to fetch water." That's already pretty medieval. Our apartment is off a fashionable pedestrian street called Republici, filled with cafes where people eat and sip drinks. Yeah, that beautiful street. We're at the bottom of this street. When you get to the top of the hill, the street opens onto the piazza, where there's a medieval fountain. So Michael grabs his bucket, climbs the hill to the piazza, fills the bucket at the fountain like they did in 1345, trying to ignore the strange looks he gets as he comes out.
Humility is okay,
Okay.
How did you know to bring your own bucket?
It's all about location, right?
He always brings his bucket. I'm kidding. Okay, how was I teaching? Okay, teaching. That's why we came. Okay. The other bombshell that lands on us the same morning is that the principal calls Ollie, that means the morning of our arrival, the principal calls Ollie to cancel the English job at the school, giving no reason why. They've hosted Project Abroad's volunteer teachers for 20 years, but now that's no longer an option. I can see fireworks going off in Ollie's eyes as they tear up. We begin to worry about whether Ollie can withstand all this chaos. But Ollie's clever and finds us an alternative teaching assignment within a day. The new school is in a village called Kodlea, outside of Brașov. Every morning at 8, we catch bus number 5, then transfer at the main terminal to another bus, arriving at Kodlea by 9. Mind you, we need to be available to teach kids at 9. We often run to catch the bus, which feels strange for people who've been retired for several years. The scenery is beautiful as we rush through the back streets of the pedestrian area, passing cafes and flower boxes, then through a lovely park with manicured gardens. Panicked about running late at the time, looking back, it seems like a pretty exhilarating experience.
That's Ollie on the left.
Cheese and cheese.
We spend the first few days teaching 3rd and 4th graders. They're bright kids who already know some English. We play songs like If I Had a Hammer and Michael Row Your Boat Ashore, the old camp songs on guitar and sing along. We ask them to write down any words they recognize as they listen to us play the song. Then right then.
Sorry.
Let me
You'll see that one again.
Okay, so the activity is we play a song with the guitar, then we ask them to sit at their seats and write down any words they recognize because they have had some English. Then they come up and write them on the board and we make sentences with them. Of course, everyone ends up singing the song together. So we knew we'd have some timing issues with this. We tried to time it good.
Okay, next.
Another popular activity is 20 questions. If you're ever trying to teach a foreign language, 20 questions is your thing. Simple but amazing because it gets the kids speaking the target language with very little teacher intervention. Starting with, is this a cup? And then you say yes or no. You can talk for 45 minutes doing, this kind of thing. Is it a cup? No, it's not a cup. Is it a door? No. Yeah, slide 17. Ollie also finds us an after-school class which was in town, designed to prepare students for the Cambridge English test. The contrast between these students and the ones at Kodlia couldn't be greater. The Cambridge kids come from well-off families who want to boost their chances of getting into top schools. The Cambridge English exam sounds as snooty as it is, designed to impress on college applications. You must have English to be successful in Romania.
And if you don't pass the Cambridge exam, you do not go on to college. I mean, it's literally that stressful.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Okay. In Romania, should I go on to this one?
Which one? They
About
still don't teach it.
pedagogy?
Go ahead.
In Romania, elementary school is only half a day. If the family can afford it, they send their kids for extra lessons in the afternoon, anything from academics to dancing, music, or sports. This puts kids from wealthy families at a striking advantage over less privileged kids. With Kodlia in the morning and Cambridge school in the afternoon, we get to see both sides of the economic divide. At Cambridge school, the kids seem stressed out with too much homework and not enough time to relax and play. In Romania, an important 8th grade test decides who will go on to strong academic careers and who will take other paths. The Cambridge kids make it clear that this test puts unhealthy pressure on the whole family. Interestingly, about half of these kids are German. In terms of pedagogy, Romania is generally pretty antiquated. Part of what makes the English volunteer program a success is it allows Romanian teachers to pick up new or innovative strategies to reach kids and strengthen their education. Ali told me at the end when we had sort of a debriefing, she told me that my style was so positive that it was in great contrast to the typical teacher-student interaction, more likely to emphasize mistakes than celebrate successes. A vestige of the Soviet pedagogy, perhaps. Or isn't it simply old-style pedagogy? Michael will now demonstrate old-style pedagogy.
You're wrong.
Yeah, moving on to the people. All right. Our first weekend in Romania, we rent a car and drive to Uceniț, a small village.
Uce de Sus.
Isn't that what it said?
Yeah, go ahead.
Uceniț, a small village hours west of Brașov, to visit Michael's cousin Cornelia. We had visited her in 2016 before her husband Dinu passed away. Back then, we had our grown kids with us. Should we show our Borders kids again? No.
Nah,
And Cornelia's sons and grandchildren were also visiting. So there was a big crowd there at that moment. And now we're visiting again, and there's only the three of us. At that point, at that dinner, Cornelia's husband Dinu served homemade brandy, a charming Romanian custom we were already familiar with from Michael's family. On this visit, Cornelia cooks us a delicious Romanian feast, and despite the language barrier, we have surprisingly animated conversations. We started learning Romanian with Duolingo and, of course, rely heavily on Google Translate to fill in the gaps. The village of Ucea de Sus lies at the foot of the Carpathian Mountains. Michael, Cornelia, and I stroll out to the fields where Michael played soccer with his cousins as a child. In this little village where Michael's mom grew up, the village church rises on a nearby hill. It is a place of joy, connection, and community, saving these small rural communities from dreariness and loneliness.
Now, the field out here in the foreground of the church is where my brother Cornell and I and Jan and, it was a bunch of children from there would play soccer. So it was kind of interesting to go back there and see this again.
One Saturday, we take Cornelia to Sambada de Sus, a monastery established in 1654. It is a very peaceful and beautiful place, and the weather is fine. We visit a museum of 16th century icons that look similar to several we inherited from Michael's father.
This is a shot of how it looks today from a similar view that you saw earlier. And now the monastery is completed around it and with many dormitories.
Yeah, that first picture you saw, the black and white, that was the original building.
This is really how it looked when my sister and I were there back in '67. And
Her sister's
it didn't look
Vega.
very different than that. We actually had a picnic in the mountains because this house is probably like maybe a 45 minutes to an hour carriage ride or horse-drawn wagon ride from where my aunt or from where Cornelia lives. That was a pretty cool experience. Anyway, we told you about this guy, Jan Nan.
Well,
I know.
I think you're gonna jump ahead.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, you're jumping ahead. Okay.
Well, this is it.
Okay, visiting Michael's relatives is undoubtedly the highlight of our trip. We meet up with more cousins. Cătălin, which is a man's name, and you have to pronounce it. It's very hard to pronounce. Cătălin and Christine and their spouses for dinner, and we meet them in an old town restaurant.
You're a little bit out
What do you
of
want?
sequence.
Do you want to say something?
Well,
No, I think
maybe I'll do this slide and then we'll move on and to what you're doing.
I
Well,
think
back in-
no, I think I'll keep going because I'm going to catch up to this.
But we got holes. Okay, go ahead.
I haven't talked about them yet at all.
I know.
I knew this would happen.
A spouse and it's ridiculous. Okay. And yeah, visiting Michael's relatives is undoubtedly the highlight of our trip. We meet up with more cousins, Caitlin and Christine, and their spouses for dinner in an old town restaurant. Okay, flip this.
Okay, well.
Flip it, so-
what's the-
Okay, I don't know how that happened. We really hit it off with Caitlin, who then invites us for dinner at his home. Yeah, that's it. Okay, so first we hit an old town, and now Caitlin, we really hit it off with this guy. He's just very jovial and funny and smart.
And his brother, also our cousin, Cosmin.
Cosmin. So he invites us to his home, and he designed this
He built
what looks
that.
like a pizza. Yeah, he built the pizza oven. Is it something?
Yeah.
Yeah, it might
No,
be.
it's beautiful.
And of course, what do we do when we arrive? He gets out the shot glasses and pours his homemade,
Suika.
suika. The evening kicks off with homemade brandy, of course, with great fanfare. We are then invited to Caitlin's parents to dine, never refusing the sarmala or the apple cake. Mind you, this is October, so apples are in season. So everybody's making different apple cake. It's just delicious. These guys, this is Caitlin and that's his dad, and they invite us to dinner. When you walk into this house, it just looks like a beautiful rose garden with a little path. But it turns out that it extends through a barn and then becomes a full-fledged, orchard with beehives and chickens and everything. These guys are our age, I guess,
It could be older.
pretty much. And they're doing all this work. It's clear that maintaining your property is a lot of work, but also feels like a labor of love. And here's your first culture quiz, guys. You ready? What does Jan use the pears for?
The plums.
Plums.
Sweet corn.
Sweet guy, thank you. Who said it? Bravo! Bravo. Or you could just say brandy in general. Okay.
Are you gonna get back to Radu and the bar now?
Yeah, but Radu comes next under exploring
Okay.
Brasov.
Okay.
Okay, hiking. We do hiking first. What happened to
No, you
hiking?
see, you left this completely out.
I'm gonna have to.
Okay, I'm just gonna do this slide.
Okay, you wanna just,
Yeah.
but then I'll repeat. Go ahead.
When we were back in Brasov, in the evenings, we got nothing to do. We decided, okay, we're gonna look for a bar. And there really aren't the standard, bars there with chairs where you like to talk to somebody behind the bar, meet people, and actually kind of get a cultural, but we found one, Mustas. And back behind the bar, there was Vlad, good name in Romania.
Solid.
And he spoke English really, really well. And so we start talking to him. He asked where we're going. I said, I visited a cousin in Uche de Sus. He said, my best friend is from Uche de Sus. I said, really? He said, yeah. And I said, what's his name? And he said, Radu. I said, yeah, okay. We're kind of talking. He says, Radu Nan. I said, well, Nan's my mom's maiden name. We got to be related, And so we got talking a little bit more. And I said, but you're a lot younger than we are. So, what's this? And he said, oh, his father's name is Jan Nan. And I'm like, oh, it's Jan Nan. I said, is he a priest? He said, yeah. I said, oh my God, it must be this guy I played soccer with when I was like 9 years old. And I was like, well, this is too much, okay? So here we are, found out he became a priest. And now he's in Cannes, France, both serving in Nice and in Cannes. Okay, so I've contacted him. We're now on, we now communicate. And he sends me this picture and also a picture with Father Nan and his grandson. So, which is pretty cool. Anyway, we already seen this
Nice
one,
job.
which is cool. And now we're hiking.
Okay. Okay, so hiking in Tampa Mountain is our therapy for the strain of living medieval, or is it living communist, or both? When we mentioned to a server in a cafe one day that we were planning to hike, he looks frightened and says, do not go, it is too dangerous because of the bears.
He was really freaked out.
But our host assures us there are no bears in that mountain. Still, you keep your eye open. We hike at least twice a week and make it all the way to the top several times with our sponsor. You saw her, Daniela, who makes a charming hiking companion. Both Michael and I love history, so we visit a small history museum in the piazza. Remember the piazza? However, we emerge even more confused about Brasov's history than when we entered. So we cross the piazza to a bookstore and ask for a good modern history book on Romania. And we discover the historian Neagu Juvara. Juvara is a folk hero for his work uncovering layers of history that had been hidden by previous powers, whether the Germans, Hungarians, or communists. Most Romanians are Orthodox Christians, and you can sense their faith in the churches, always open, always active with prayer and song. Particularly in Bucharest, it seems like a spiritual feeling in that city. There is a countenance visible in the people that I understand as the refreshment of faith. You can feel the intensity of it inside the churches. But I must say that the Black Church of Brasov has a different feel. Forgive me for my personification of this church as a kind of metaphor in trying to get a handle on the twists and turns of Romanian history. To back up a bit, the Black Church was built in the mid-14th century and established as a Catholic church. But why Catholic when Romanians had practiced the Orthodox faith since the 2nd century? Well, here's the deal. In the early 14th century, the Austro-Hungarian Empire seized this lovely valley in the Transylvanian mountains. The church is Catholic because the Saxons, meaning Germans, settlers, and their Hungarian overlords are Catholic. The Hungarians send a group of industrious Saxons to build a town there. And why did they choose them? Because they knew that they had a knack for building achingly charming fairy tale towns. Sibiu and Sighișoara are other examples of medieval Saxon towns built with Hungarian backing in valleys of the Carpathians. Having seized this valley in Brașov, the Saxons get busy creating a dazzling jewel of a city with a wall surrounding it so sturdy, much of it endures today. It becomes a town of German merchants in the middle of Romania, enriched by trade with the Hungarians to the northwest and also with the Turks, who are forever barking at the gate, not only to trade but also to plunder. Now I will circle back with my amateur psychoanalysis of the Black Church. The Great Schism of the Western and Eastern churches is in 1054. So in the 14th century, there are two churches, the Eastern and the Western. So we're looking at an identity crisis. Perhaps the Black Church is aware from the start that outside the town gate, there is another powerful faith with an ancient history that has been excluded, and that is the Orthodox faith. But the real trauma for the church, from my humble viewpoint, is the coming of Lutheranism to Brașov. Our beleaguered Black Church would be compelled suddenly to provide all services in the Lutheran tradition. That kind of transformation has got to be hard on the church. When I first walk into the Black Church, I'm struck by the coldness. In stark contrast with Catholic and Orthodox churches, the people face the middle of the church rather than forward toward the altar. This is because the Lutheran sermon is delivered from the middle of the church. The place strikes me as a troubled spirit, having been jolted around a bit too much. And to punctuate the coldness, just outside the church is a statue of a very disapproving fellow named Johannes Gunther, with his arm pointing straight out ahead of him. This fellow is the very forceful purveyor of Lutheran doctrine to Brașov. What is he pointing at? A set of exquisite 14th century buildings that would become the Protestant German school of Brașov, and still is today. I remember we go back to Cambridge School, interesting, a lot of those kids are German. Once colonized, it is hard to remove the presence of the colonizer. On a more positive note, the Black Church is famous for its organ, the largest in Eastern Europe, attracting many tourists every week. We attend an amazing concert there.
Okay, now we got Radu. No, the tour guide.
Okay. As we can't get enough history, we decide to book a private tour of the town. That's how we meet Radu, a very colorful person. He spices things up with anecdotes. For example, he tells us that for several centuries, the Brașov government is a vassal of the Turkish Empire, known as the Ottomans. Stuffed cabbage is originally a Turkish specialty. So when their Turkish overlords visit Brașov, the Romanian chefs impress them by serving their favorite dish with one alteration. They use pork in the recipe. As you may know, there's a strict taboo on eating pork in the Islamic tradition. The Romanian chefs just serve up the plate with a glint in their eye, one of the subtle ways of undermining the power of the oppressor. Radu also tells us about Count Dracula. Vlad Tepes, or Dracula, is a native Romanian, therefore not allowed in the town of He falls in love with a beautiful blonde Saxon princess, but Saxon women are forbidden to cavort with Romanian rabble. It was by stealth that they meet each other, and in spite of all the interdictions, they have about 5 kids. We learn from Radu that the Saxon officials of Rashov obtained the right to judge outlaws and even execute them without the option of an appeal to a higher court. Radu points out where public burnings take place in the piazza. In fact, in the medieval period, power in Brasov alternates between the Ottomans and the Austro-Hungarians. Before electing members to the city council, officials often must get permission from either the Sultan or the Hungarian king, or both. Vlad Tepes, or Dracula, is driven by the will to extract Ottomans from his native state of Wallachia, a province in Romania. Yes, he was an Orthodox Christian fighting the encroachment of Islam, making him, in some quarters, a folk hero. News of his signature method of impaling his enemies traveled far and wide, and certainly gave some pause before attacking. When confronted with images of whole armies impaled, you wonder many things, including who had sharpened that many tree trunks. It is one of those haunting historical questions. Don't you have a slide right now? This is your slide, right?
Yeah, I can do this one. We visited the Communist Museum in Brasov. It appears that a lot of cities have these museums set up to the Communist Museum. And here, there are walls of testimonials of, just hand, typed up testimonials of Romanians who lived through the communist era. On the lower right, you see a pedal-powered boat that was used in an attempt to escape. Didn't say if it was trying to get over the Danube River or out into the Black Sea. I don't know. They just didn't say. But the guy was arrested. He didn't quite make it. Anyway, I have to say that reading the testimonials, I felt a connection with a lot of them, just based on what my family has told us about relatives, and I'll get into that a little bit later. But many of the cities have these museums to the communist era, and I guess it's basically to keep people so they can go in there and remember what it was like, because they don't want to go back. Romania. I don't know if you do this one.
Did we do? We
Well,
didn't do
Romania-
diabolical. We didn't do diabolical.
Well,
Maybe
that's
that
probably
comes next.
next.
Okay.
Romania, it's a kind of a cautionary tale, slide into autocracy at one-party rule where the communists took over. And they thought, talking to some of the older folks, they didn't think it was going to be around very long. They said, oh, it'll be gone in 5 years. Well, it was 45 years later. And basically it takes control because no one can speak because they're not sure if that person is going to turn them in. Because if you turn somebody in, you could literally get a better schooling. You could get a better housing. You could get, a better job just by being that person. And so people were afraid because the government was bribing people to turn other people in. And so nobody trusted anybody, and it just shuts down all, dialogue. Now you do the takeaway.
Okay, so visiting Romania, a country still recovering from the scars of communism, makes me realize how precious the freedoms we enjoy are in the United States. Okay, and then so we need a quote by Jubara, so that's in the next page. Yeah.
Here it is.
Jubara is, remember, our folk historian. He's a folk hero because he sort of tried to clear away all of the propaganda that was in the textbooks and that kind of thing.
And so, well, basically, a lot of the information that Kim's coming out with was in Javara's book, which was quite impressive. We would read that book every day in our bus ride, and we would talk about it. He's a very, very well-known historian who passed away not that long ago. But anyway, something diabolical came to Romania. It was a word that Protasa Usheriu, or Matushka Usheriu, wrote in her books discussing how the communists would try to, she described them as diabolical, is really what it comes down to. Here you
Yeah.
see,
Can I say something?
Yeah.
I guess what struck me was the whole idea of the soul being stolen, that kept coming up with his childhood, Matushka, with George Kalchu, and, he was there at our wedding, he was a good friend of Michael's family. He writes about it, that it is like a possession, possession by the devil that takes decades to recover from. And then I finally, this historian we're reading, you get toward the end of the book and you have this quote: "The most tragic consequence of that half century was that it destroyed our soul." So this is frighteningly final, and means we must keep praying for release and freedom for the soul of Romania.
and when you have this coming from a Protasa, then also coming from George Calciu, and then also coming from Juvara, you're not just taking one source there. It's kind of like, okay, and then also coming from my family. And I guess we're just gonna.
Well, I can do this, but you can talk about your family, and then I'm gonna do that.
Okay. And here I'm showing you my grandpa George. He was in prison 8 years after my father escaped in 1946. And so Cornelia's father was taken away 2 or 3 times. It never really got it right because I hated questioning him about it. We would go visit them back in 67, again in 70, my sister in 73. And each time he would get taken away a couple days later, card stop in the middle of the night, haul him away. He'd be disappeared for a week, one time for 2 weeks, come back beaten up, just to find out what did you're with cohorting with Americans. What did they tell you? Did they give you money? Did they give you any information? What did they tell you? That kind of stuff. And it's like,
And they had 2 visits, his family had 2 visits with Cornelia and that family. But we only found out in each time
16.
he was taken away and beaten up. We only found out in 2016 when we went back that this had happened on both the visits after they didn't tell us. So it was pretty shocking.
even my sister Radhika, when she came back in 73, which really was the last time that we visited as a family or family members, she said that they were rude to her and she couldn't understand why. And then again in 16 and find out why, in general. So this is my and that's about it.
Well, it's a story of a people who only recently had territories restored and is trying out the messy process of representative democracy, but not without lots of unwelcome interference. And that's my last.
That's it,
right?
guys.
So now we'll take questions if you
If you have
want.
questions, that's great.
You saw a monastery flash on the screen from, I think, 14th century. I'm just curious, what was the most ancient, oldest building or church that you actually saw?
It might have been the one in Brasov from 1495.
Well, when was somebody was first built?
Simit de Sus
Was
was
that the 16th century? Yeah.
that was 16th century, and so this one was 15th century.
I think you might have to go up north to see that, but I don't know. I know there's so many monasteries. I don't
Well, I
know.
think Christianity predates that by quite a bit in Romania, correct?
Right, it does. I mean,
Oh, yes.
this church was built in 1495. It was said that it was either like the 2nd century that it came to. Romania.
Yeah, 2nd century. It's been there
But then
since.
what was built could have been destroyed.
Yeah.
But this is St. Nicholas from 1495. Yes, sir.
Yes.
You said there are still 14,000 churches there?
Yeah.
So not many were destroyed then during the communist era?
Well, a lot of them were built during the Ottoman and the Austro-Hungarian Empire time, but mainly during the Ottoman. There was Stepan the Great.
No, she's asking about what war. The
Why?
communists, why didn't the communists destroy more
They
churches?
did destroy a lot of them. And in
Yeah,
fact,
they did.
but since
Still
then,
so many.
they have all been, they didn't take them down to the ground. They didn't take them down to the ground, and they've all been rebuilt. All the churches, like this one here, it
Yeah.
literally almost looks brand new.
Is the government building, who's funding that?
The government is doing a lot of it, I think. Some of it might be the EU, since because a lot of them are historical.
Yeah.
But a lot of them are funded. The people, it's primarily the people, but I know it's somewhat the government too. But that I'm not 100% sure.
Well, that's fabulous.
Any questions? Yes.
Did you get a sense of whether the monastic life is flourishing? The number of monks is increasing.
I don't know if it's increasing. All I know is that it has a huge. There are monasteries in a lot of places. In fact, Father Robert McLean is going there in May.
McLean.
I think it's either April or May, and he takes a route through Romania. You saw the way that the Carpathian Mountains kind of make that left-hand turn kind of thing. When he goes around the outside and goes all the way up to Bukovina, which is in the north toward Ukraine, and he visits several monasteries on the way. So he's actually going to have a pilgrimage in another month or two.
This building, it looked to me like a monastery. I didn't hear you. The one that was built around the church that
Yes.
you used to play soccer.
Yes,
This was huge building. I mean,
yes.
it requires a lot of maintenance. You have to have some people who live there to maintain.
What,
Oh, yeah.
and
No, there
Richard
were-
Assis?
These monks or?
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Richard Assis?
No, in Sumbata, this was.
Oh, yeah, some of those systems monks.
And there was it was an impressive building and beautifully done. Any other questions? Yes.
Yes, first of all, thank you so much for the poetic versioning of the trip. I really enjoyed how you sort of narrated it. But two points. Even though the educational system appears to be very rudimentary in its methods, the quality is very high. I
Yeah.
don't know if too many people know that have just about half of the Microsoft staff is from Romania.
I will say
They
that
graduated in there.
growing up, we had many relatives come and actually stay with us. And I was always so impressed. There would be a high school kid that would come, Cristiano Krish. He was a relative of my dad. He was on my dad's side. And I remember he came here in high school and he had already taken advanced calculus and, he was quite a brilliant young man. He ended up working for DuPont and then going off on his own.
Exactly,
Yeah.
and this is, if we could even put it that way, there was a lot of pressure during the Ceausescu regime to sort of increase the quality of education, right?
Right.
This is probably one of the residual quotes benefits with, if there is such a thing. And the second point that I think you mentioned very well is the impact, even today, that fear factor, which is very classic. It's a classic communist methodology, isolation and fear. You can still notice the fact that people don't talk about those things, about the tragedies that impacted their families directly, is fairly common, no matter where you go across Romania. And now, now they're sort of starting to write about it, but if you think about it, it's fairly, it's our generation. And the
Yeah.
children, and if you actually equate the fact that none of the people that were responsible for those atrocities ever went to trial.
Right.
And their children are now in power.
Right.
right? So that, Father Georgie, used to say that, and it's actually, across history. It takes an average of 6 generations to sort of start mitigating some of the, damage. If
Well, I'm gonna go back because they love Americans, the kids did. It was, I don't know if you had a chance to look through that, small folder that was passed around. It was, quite touching, the way the kids would, after each, class would run up and hug Kim. Sometimes they hugged me, but it was primarily just going after her. And, I just grab her guitar, hold it like, and they would run up and hug her. And it was quite touching, and it was a beautiful experience, both from seeing my family and also just the reaction from the children.
You remember the guy Caitlin, I said the jovial guy? We kept in touch with him, so we're back and forth on WhatsApp, which is really, that's what it's all about. You travel and try to keep stay in touch with people. And we're in touch with the teachers too. Yeah,
Ali
teachers.
and Andrea, one of the teachers,
Yeah.
and actually
And
Father Nan.
yeah, because we already have we're going to that church in the south of France because, we have to, because I was a French
I
teacher.
gotta go see him.
You just have to do
I
it.
gotta go see him.
When are you going?
In August.
Okay.
Probably, I think we may be there for the Dormition feast.
Okay. I wondered if you were able to attend any Orthodox church services while you were there.
Yes,
You did?
in St. Nicholas we were able
Okay.
to. We could have done in Uche de Sus, but we didn't. We weren't dressed properly, and I didn't want to push it on my, even when we went for a walk. My aunt and friends were saying, why don't you go to church? And she just backed up and said, I'm not dressed for it. And obviously, we weren't either. I mean, we came in jeans, and I think I had one nice pair of pants. So,
But
it was-
when we came back, or when we arrived in the town, the people were coming down from this little church in Uche de Sus, with like food that they had, and it's a very close-knit community. It's very interesting to do the contrast, rural with the city. The cities have a lot of problems, partly because they're so artificial. These little artificial German cities, that never let the Romanians in anyway. So, the ironic part is that when you read the tourist books, they say, oh, we've got to go to this beautiful city. So we ended up going with our kids, to all 3 of these cities. And now I kind of understand why Father McLean takes people up north, where that's the real, that could be considered the real Romanian, So it's just interesting.
It was interesting in Uche de Sus, my cousin, Cornelia, there are women, and every afternoon they get together, on one side of the street where the sun shines, and they just sit there and they just
Gab.
and they talk, and they, just, it's basically all the women in the town, about 6 of them, right in that area at the end of the street. And there's so many pictures I didn't show, but that's just the way it is.
So would you say that overall the country is a religious country? I mean, here in America, we have a growing number of nuns, okay? I don't mean N-U-N-S, but, people not affiliated with anything.
Right.
And there's a lot of secular emphasis, that kind of thing. So is that
I think-
taking over in
Yeah, I
Romania
mean,
too?
Yeah, it's okay to talk about God in Romania. People won't get uncomfortable. It's a spiritual place.
Oh,
It is a very spiritual place, and I was a little bit, put off because in Bucharest, I felt sort of the very spirituality of the place. Brașov, not so much. Like you kind of sense a malaise going on. You try to figure out what's going on.
I think you had a lot more people condensed in a small.
Yeah, it's a small place.
But-
Lots of German cultural stuff going on in that very small walled city.
That may be true too.
everybody seemed to smoke cigarettes. So it was, it didn't have, you know what, I would walk along and I would say, okay, I know what it is that I feel in Romania in general, and it's the refreshment of faith. I'm looking at these faces of people in Brașov, they look tired, they look, worn down, not,
You could see that, but I wouldn't say
Kind of, well,
that's a process.
in comparison, like they weren't,
Okay.
and I don't know why. I mean,
It wasn't uncommon to see,
Yes.
an icon in a classroom or a cross hanging on like above on one of the walls.
Yeah,
It was very, and you do have extremely a lot of very, very pious people and religious people. I mean, the churches that when we went to, and I could pull up a shot of St. Nicholas, it's a long church, probably not any wider than this, but maybe half again as long, and it was packed with people. So, I mean, and that was one of several Orthodox churches just in that area. And so I would say that you do see it pretty well
but
attended.
your cousins, that Adrian, they told us that when in the years right after Ceausescu's fall, that people seemed to think that Orthodox faith was going to be the way to save their soul. It sounds like reasonable to me, and that's why they started building lots and lots of churches in the decades right after that, like in the 80s. Then it's sort of like, this is how we heal. We just build lots of churches. And then, but your cousin, what's her name? Juliana, she said,
Juliana.
after a while you start thinking, wait a minute, we might need a school or a hospital or, other things too.
Yeah, she did have
She said that, right?
she did have a,
I should let these people go home with us.
yeah, I know, you probably want to go. Okay, Michael, you had a question?
Actually, you answered my question. You said that St. Nicholas was full of people.
Right.
Did you have the same impression of other churches that you?
We didn't have an opportunity, we went into a lot of churches, we didn't have a chance to really attend too many Sunday services.
But you can see the people coming out, so.
Yeah, because we were basically traveling, like to Uche de Sus, we spent 2 weekends, and then one weekend we were in Brașov.
Well, we
And
went
so
to
if
St. Nicholas and that was packed.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was packed.
I
That
didn't
was
get
in Brașov.
In Brașov, but
In Brașov,
right
yeah.
outside of Brașov,
Okay.
because.
I was looking for a picture of.
Right outside
inside. Here it is. Now, this is when we visited it, when not on a Sunday. I didn't take any pictures then, but here you see the, this is inside of St. Nicholas. And it's
Yeah, it
quite
was
a
packed
beautiful,
on Sunday. We went there on Sunday.
People standing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Seats
Yes.
only.
Yes.
Long services.
yeah. We didn't take communion. We didn't take communion. When people started walking up for communion, we just, made the sign of the cross and said, okay, but yeah, it was definitely a beautiful, experience.
Did you generally feel safe walking around the city?
Oh, very.
Yeah,
And
Not a thought at all about danger.
okay.
the whole town was so clean as well. Let's see if I can find one picture. Yeah, there's so many pictures, and this isn't even all of them either. I got more on my phone. I haven't transferred. Okay. Yeah, we can wrap it up. Okay.
Well, thank you for coming.
Anybody else?
Thank
We're
you.
good? All right.
Yeah, I do.